Morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, September the 3rd. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Multnomah County Commissioners. The health and safety of our community and staff members are at the forefront of our minds as we continue to navigate county business in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. In accordance with the declaration of emergency announced on March 11th and extended by the Board of County Commissioners on July 2nd, today's meeting is being held virtually. To align with social distancing guidelines, some rules associated with Board of County Commissioner meetings will be temporarily altered. Today, we will be suspending public testimony on non-agenda items, and written testimony on agenda items has been accepted via email. Please remember to mute your mic when you are not speaking, and before you present, make sure to unmute your mic and check to see that your camera is on. May I have a motion on the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson moves. Sorry, Commissioner Stegman moves. Commissioner Vega-Peterson seconds approval of the consent calendar. Marina, will you please take a roll call vote?
Yes, Commissioner Myron? Commissioner Myron?
Is she on?
She is, yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Myron, can you hear us?
Well, why don't you skip over her and we will go on to the next.
Okay. Commissioner Jayapal?
Aye.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Stegman?
Aye.
Chair Kafoury?
Aye. The consent calendar is approved.
R1, hearing on application for an exemption to statewide planning, Goal 3, agricultural lands, and an amendment to the Multnomah County Comprehensive Plan and Multnomah County Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Map to rezone the property located at 2326 Southeast Troutdale Road in East Rural Multnomah County from exclusive farm use to rural residential.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Stegman moves. Commissioner Jayapal seconds approval of R1. Marina, can we pause for a second? Will you please see if there's something that you can do on your end to help Commissioner Myron?
Yes, Paul, can you reach out? I'll reach out to you via chat real quick to make sure.
She said she's having issues with sound. Commissioner Myron, can you hear us? Yay, nay, doesn't look like. I guess she couldn't say nay if she couldn't hear us. Learning.
Hi.
Great, you're on now.
Wait, where's the, I'm trying, hold on. Go on. Sorry.
All right.
Like, why isn't it? No.
Adam?
Hi,
I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, are we ready for the staff presentation?
Please, thank you.
Yes, well, good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Adam Barber. I'm the county's Deputy Planning Director. It's great to see everyone. I always enjoy my time in front of the board. It's also my pleasure to introduce the project manager and the county's senior planner, Kevin Cook. I know he's virtually on. I haven't seen his video. He's waving there. So I want to introduce Kevin. We've scheduled this public hearing for the board to consider a request from a community member in East Multnomah County to rezone one property and a portion of the public road right-of-way. And an approval of this request would require an amendment to the county's comprehensive land use plan and also to the zoning map. However, we first must address a procedural issue to provide necessary public notices required by the county's code. More specifically, we mailed notice of today's board hearing to neighbors in the project area as required by county code. And we intended to publish notice of this board hearing in the Oregonian newspaper at least 20 days before the hearing, and that's also required by the county regulations. But unfortunately, we did not meet that required newspaper mailing deadline and we didn't realize that before we had already scheduled today's hearing. We've now submitted the necessary newspaper notice, and we'd like to request that the board continue this hearing to September 24th at 9:30 a.m. to be held virtually using the call-in or login information provided on the board's website. I wanted to mention that we're also planning to resend public direct mail notice to neighbors in the project area to avoid any confusion about the date and time of the continued hearing. Now, to avoid any substantive discussion on the matter prior to the publication of the newspaper notice, we're not going to provide any additional briefing on the application specifics today. Instead, assuming that the board agrees that the hearing can be continued to September 24th, Kevin can describe the request that has been made to the board. He can summarize the approval criteria and then also relay the Planning Commission's recommendation on this particular application at that continued hearing date and time. At that time, you'll also hear from the applicant, and we'll share any public testimony that we have received about the proposal. And then finally, continuing the hearing until September 24th will provide the general public adequate time to be alerted to the proposal, provide adequate time for the public to review any application materials, and then participate in the land use process if they decide that that's what they'd like to do. That's all the information that we wanted to convey to the board this morning, and Kevin and I are available for any questions about this continuation request.
Wonderful. I'm going to call through the commissioners to see if anyone has questions about the continuation request. Commissioner Myron? Commissioner Jayapal?
No questions. Thank you, Adam.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson?
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Stegman?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Kevin. It's good to see you. It's been a while. And good to know that we'll have you back on Thursday, September 4th. Should I have a motion? May I have a motion to continue this hearing until Thursday, September 24th?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Commissioner Jayapal moves. Commissioner Stegman seconds. Approval of the motion. Marina, would you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Myron? Commissioner Jayapal?
Aye.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Stegman?
Aye.
Commissioner Myron, did you?
Aye.
Chair Kafori?
Aye. The motion is approved and the hearing will be continued to Thursday, September the 24th. Thanks, everyone.
R2, second reading of ordinance adopting Universal Preschool Now Initiative Petition.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson moves. Commissioner Stegman seconds. Approval of R2.
Would you like me to go?
Yeah.
Okay. So as the board will recall, this is the second reading of the ordinance to adopt the Universal Preschool Now petition. We're doing this at the behest of the chief petitioners and the Universal Preschool Now campaign, which has testified before this board in support of consolidating the UPN campaign with the Preschool for All measure that we referred to voters last month. This adoption will be followed by a motion to immediately repeal the ordinance, clearing the way for a single measure before voters. These steps enable the UPN campaign to unite with Preschool for All Coalition to support a single universal preschool measure in November. We believe that putting a single measure before the voters will reduce voter confusion and strengthen the likelihood that voters approve the preschool measure. Since we've discussed this at length and we've already had a previous vote, that's all of my remarks on this item.
Thank you, Commissioner Vega-Peterson. I'm going to call through commissioners for questions or comments on this item. And we also, I don't see her at this very moment, but I'm assuming that we have our county BS. There she is. Jenny Madcor's on the line if anybody has questions for our county attorney. We will start with Commissioner Myron.
Thank you, Chair. I will reiterate some of the comments that I made last week when we had the first reading of for adoption of this measure. And I just want to say I strongly support expanding the availability of free preschool, especially for families that face the steepest barriers to access. We all agree that early education is a game changer, and I want to reinforce my support for universal preschool. I also want to reiterate that I've been troubled by the process, and since today is the final vote on the matter, I want to underscore the concerns I voiced at last week's meeting for the record, and voice one additional concern. First, obviously, I think I wish that that Preschool for All and Universal Preschool Now had negotiated a unified measure in the years that they were working in parallel on the same ultimate goal. The compromises in the emerged Preschool for All measure have been possible for years, including up to submission of the initiative petition by the Universal Preschool Now petitioners. It's frustrating to me that no compromise was reached sooner, because the upshot leaves the board in the difficult position that we find ourselves in today. No one wants to be in a situation of having voters consider two competing ballot measures around a single issue that everyone on this board supports. But process matters, and it matters a lot. The ends don't justify the means, even if those ends are exemplary. I am deeply distressed that the plan to get to a single preschool measure requires this board to maneuver the initiative petition system in a new way that is questionable at the very least in regard to the spirit of the law. And I know our county attorney has opined about the legality of what we're going to discuss later, which is the repeal as well. But I question that as well. I want us to be very clear that what we're doing today is not actually enacting the measure, which is what we have the option to do, and enact or refer, but the opposite. We are adopting the measure only with the express intent to immediately sweep it away. A number of rationales have been suggested for why we would take this uncommon and, I believe, highly questionable approach. But even if the measures are essentially the same, or the chief petitioners agreed, or technically it's legal, or the board really has the ability to do whatever it wants, and we don't want to confuse the voters, even if these were true, the bottom line for me remains: by adopting and repealing Universal Preschool Now, this board will decide that the voters cannot vote on a measure that has gathered all the required signatures and otherwise met all of the requirements to qualify for the ballot without participation of an elected body. Once an initiative petition has been submitted, it no longer belongs to the chief petitioners. I agree with all the attorneys' statements that up until the very point of submission, the chief petitioners can do what they want. They can take it back. They can do anything. But once it's been submitted, there's a demarcation, and it belongs to the tens of thousands of people who signed on to the petition. And that's who we're here to represent. It isn't our responsibility to substitute what we want or what we feel is a better measure for what has actually been submitted. What this board is doing today is taking over that process and substituting its will over that of the voters. No amount of rationalization gets around the fact that this subverts, in my mind, the initiative process and the democratic process, and I cannot reconcile that the ends here justify the means. And I also just wanted to mention a concern about messaging that the Universal Preschool Now campaign sent to its own members over the weekend, stating that this board did, quote, did what we had been hoping they would do. They voted to adopt and suspend our Universal Preschool Now ballot measure, unquote. This is deeply concerning to me because the statements and discussion last week clearly referred to the intention to repeal the ordinance, not suspend it. And indeed, the action on our agenda today is a repeal. My concern is that Universal Preschool Now supporters have been led to believe we have simply suspended their ordinance, allowing us the opportunity to bring it back to life or refer it to a later ballot if voters reject Preschool for All in November. And that simply isn't true. I do not support suspension, to be clear. In the current context, suspending the ordinance would be even more confusing and would seem to suggest we, as an elected body, are prepared to override the decision of the voters. And I want to be clear with the public and with the Universal Preschool Now supporters about this convoluted process and the fact that we are, in reality, entirely wiping away Up Now's hard-earned measure. Voters will not be able to consider it either now or later. And if Preschool for All fails, both campaigns would need to start from scratch. I wish this had been communicated clearly so that if Universal Preschool Now supporters had concerns, then they could have contacted us in advance of the votes today. This has been a difficult process, and I want to thank all of my colleagues for their engagement with me over the past weeks and months. I know it has not been easy. I also want to thank everyone who has participated with Universal Preschool Now and Preschool for All for their work developing the important content of these proposals. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jayapal?
Thank you, Chair. I made fairly extensive comments last week, so I won't repeat all of them. I'll just sort of mention one additional thought, and that is in response to the concern, which I take seriously, that what we're doing is contrary to the spirit of the law. This process of sending a unified measure, excuse me, dog, sending a unified measure to the voters and adopting and repealing the Universal Preschool Now measure is contrary to the spirit of the law. You know, the reason, well, as I understand it, the spirit of the law is to allow a mechanism for voters to create legislation and to bring it to their elected officials and to give the larger voting population a chance to vote on that measure. The reason we're in the situation that we're in, as Commissioner Myron points out, is that the rule is once the petitioners have submitted a petition, they can no longer take it back. When I look at the context of the whole body of law around initiative petitions, what I understand that to be is an administrative rule to make sure that there's finality. You can't have people submitting something, changing it at the last minute. It creates an administrative hassle. If the purpose of that rule were to in some way protect or make sure that the 32,000 signatories to the petition had the petition move forward, I would think the rule would be once you collected your signatures, you can't pull it back. And in fact, I would think the rule would be once you collected even one signature or some substantial number of signatures, you couldn't pull it back. So in my, really my own interpretation, I think we're all trying to figure this out each for ourselves. In my interpretation, that particular rule doesn't affect the spirit of what the initiative petition process is about, which is allowing people to bring legislation forward. And by submitting a unified measure that all of the petitioners agree is a synthesis of the two measures, we are doing that. I am also concerned about the Universal Preschool Now messaging that said that we had voted to adopt and suspend when it was very, very clear in all of our comments, certainly in mine, I think, that we were doing no such thing. I was also clear that I would not vote for suspension precisely because once voters have voted on the unified measure, if someone wants to bring another preschool measure forward, they need to go to the process again, because going to the voters, having them vote no, and then coming back with a substantially similar measure would be subverting the expressed will of the voters. So with that, I think I'm done with my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Vega Peterson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I appreciate everybody's the comments and kind of the reflection that everybody has had on this. I would just reiterate, this step is really, I would say, unusual, but it's also something that we've been asked to do. This has been a really long process, and it's kind of incredible that there were two distinct measures, both looking to bring preschool to Multnomah County at the same time. Commissioner Myron has expressed frustration that it didn't happen sooner. It wasn't through lack of effort. There have been a lot of conversations, and sometimes when you're making big policy, things just take longer than you would like, and that was the case this time. But it was also because I think the values for both coalitions were held very strongly in wanting to ensure that exactly what our coalition partners, the people who went into putting together these policies and these proposals, were going to be reflected in something that everyone could agree to. And it was a long process, but I think it was a really good process because we did get to a point where we had a strong policy that reflects the desire to make sure that we have universal access for all 3 and 4-year-olds for quality preschool. We have living wage for the teachers and the classroom assistants who are going to be providing this education, and we are centering and building a program that really embraces the children who have the hardest time accessing preschool right now, and has been developed in partnership with Brown, Black, Indigenous, and all people of color communities to really build that system. So, and I would say that, we have been asked multiple times to take this step so that we can bring one unified measure to the ballot, and that's what we're doing today. I was also just very confused by the email that was sent out by Universal Preschool Now that it referred to the actions that the board had already taken. It sounded like that had been drafted prior to our meeting and just was sent out kind of without a correction on what was happening. But we did, it has been very clear. It was clearly stated by me and other commissioners last week that the intention was to adopt this measure and then repeal it so that we can have something, a single thing move forward in November. And that's where we are today. And, that's why I think it's very important that we take this step today.
Thank you, Commissioner Vega Peterson. Last but not least, Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you, Chair. I had said quite a bit at our last board meeting as well, so I'll keep my comments brief. But for me, I think it's a value issue, and I choose people over process. And I understand that this has been very messy, but we can't change the past. All we can do is move forward. I believe that this board does have the authority, so therefore I don't have that issue moving forward. And as I stated previously, I am committed to use my voice and my vote to support policies that will improve the quality of life for our children and for our children's children. And this is a good policy, and the two policies have converged and are materially the same. So I can, in good conscience, feel good about my vote and acknowledge the messiness of it, but ultimately I think it is the right thing to do, and I am supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stegman. As my colleagues and fellow parents have pointed out, thousands of children across our community are starting school this week or getting ready to start this unprecedented school year after the holiday weekend. And I can't help but wonder how many of these children had the privilege of attending a high quality preschool. I wonder how many of our community's kids are starting the school year behind their peers because their families weren't able to afford or to access preschool. And I'm thinking about the countless parents or guardians whose wallets were stretched by the cost of preschool, or they missed out on employment opportunities because they couldn't afford to send their child to preschool at all. For me, the fact that I have to ask these questions drives what's at stake in November. We shouldn't have to wonder which students are moving through their year with the advantages of a high quality early education and which aren't. It shouldn't be a privilege. Every child, every family deserves to have access to preschool that's low in cost and high in quality. Each student, each family, and our entire community stands to benefit. And the voters of Multnomah County will have the chance to make that happen this November. But I'll reiterate what I said last week. We need to get the outcome right, but we need to get the process right too. This vote to adopt the Universal Preschool Now measure is an action that's both empty and consequential. We are voting to adopt with no intention to implement. Instead, we're voting to adopt solely that it can be wiped off the books. Had the two campaigns combined their efforts and supporters, both excellent and passionate in their own rights, earlier into a single ballot measure, the path to creating a transformative preschool system in Multnomah County would likely have been as reliable as any ballot measure could hope for. But once those citizens' initiative signatures were turned in, I believe that the county is obligated to proceed in a manner that honors the expectations that thousands of residents had when they signed their names in good faith. I agree that having a single preschool for all measure on the November ballot gives our community the best shot at making accessible, affordable preschool a reality. As a mother, as a community member, and as a colleague to the commissioners on this commission, I don't necessarily want the UPN ballot measure on the ballot. But as a public official, I believe that the UPN measure should be either fully adopted or referred to the ballot. I bring all of those perspectives and experiences to my position, which makes my no vote among one of the most difficult ones that I've cast, just like it was last week. But my role as an elected official gives me clear direction on how I believe this commission should proceed. I know that, again, I will be in the minority today by voting no, but I hope that my vote signals to the chief petitioners and signatories of future citizens initiatives, both here in Multnomah County and across the state, that there will always be robust debate in the rare instances where the letter of the law and the spirit of the law come to a head. Marina, would you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Myron,
No.
Commissioner Jayapal,
Aye.
Commissioner Vega Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Stegman,
Aye.
Chair Kafori.
No. The ordinance is adopted.
R3, ordinance repealing ordinance 1285, adopting Universal Preschool Now initiative petition and declaring an emergency.
So as we, motion, so moves.
Second. Aye.
Commissioner Vega Peterson moves, Commissioner Stegman seconds, approval of R3. Now you can go, Commissioner Vega Peterson.
Okay, now I can go. So as we've discussed previously, the Universal Preschool Now Coalition did vote, not just the chief petitioners, but the entire coalition voted to support a single unified ballot measure under the Preschool for All at the beginning of August, in part because of the work we've done over the last few months to ensure universality with a single vote, with an automatic bump in the income tax rate, and an update to the Preschool for All proposed classroom assistant wage scale, which were their two main concerns. Agreement on those two issues enabled us to come together to an agreement around a single measure. Unfortunately, as I've said, those discussions took longer than either party had anticipated, in part due to COVID's impacts on the timeline to final Preschool for All's implementation planning work. Compressed timeline has made this adopt and repeal step necessary. But while I want to reiterate, while some have questioned the spirit of this move, my office has still yet to hear from a single Multnomah County resident that they oppose the action we're taking here today. Our attorney has made it clear that there is no legal issue with enacting and amending the initiative to repeal. UPN advocates have stated that the Preschool for All measure we put forward meets their objectives in pursuing a universal preschool measure in Multnomah County. At both the August 6th and August 27th hearings, Representative Universal Preschool Now's campaign advocated to merge and place a single measure on the November ballot. And at the August 6th briefing, you heard similar pleas from the county's Preschool for All coalition. As I said last week, the Preschool for All measure, if passed by voters and when fully implemented, will constitute an investment in our children more than 10 times larger than the Portland Children's Levy. It will positively impact children, families, employers, our school partners, teachers, preschool providers, and preschool workers who are overwhelmingly women and disproportionately women of color. It will be an investment worthy of this moment, which rightfully focuses on BIPOC communities. I'm proud to vote for this motion, and I hope that you will support it. In preparing to this motion to repeal, I did check with our attorney to see if an adopt and amend to suspend motion was legally possible and what that plan would look like in case that was an option for this board to move forward. But in last week's meeting, I heard members of this board speak clearly to their preference of repealing the measure rather than suspending it. There were different reasons given, but based on that feedback, this is why we have the motion to repeal in front of us today. Thank you.
Thank you. We now, oh, Marina, did we receive any public testimony on this item?
No, Madam Chair, we did not.
Thank you. Although I want to ensure that we have received public testimony to our individual offices on lots of communication on this issue. I'm going to call on commissioners by district to see who has questions or comments, and we are going to start this time with Commissioner Stegman.
No questions or comments.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Jayapal?
No additional questions or comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Myron?
Just very briefly, I wasn't going to comment, but really having this happen in reality right now just emphasizes to me how wrong I feel that this is. We have the option to refer or to adopt. We just adopted, and we are now immediately voting to repeal. It just feels wrong. And anyway, I feel I'm going to vote no on this as well, because I oppose the entire sort of sequence of events. And that's all.
Thank you. Marina, would you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Myron?
No.
Commissioner Jayapal?
Aye.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Stegman?
Aye.
Chair Kafoury?
No. The ordinance is adopted. Now we have come to the time on our board for comments on non-agenda items. And I'm going to call through commissioners to see if they have any issues they'd like to discuss or items they would like the public to know about. And we are going to start with Commissioner Myron.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any specific events or anything to talk about. I just want to express just my appreciation for my fellow board members. This has been an extremely difficult process we went through with regard to the preschool, universal preschool conversation. And amidst all of it, I have never felt anything but just respect and compassion and thoughtfulness from all of my fellow commissioners. And I really just do feel, and this is at a time when things are most challenging and therefore have the potential to go awry just in terms of relationship. And it's just a testament to everyone that things didn't here. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jayapal.
Nothing additional for me. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson.
Well, I just wanted to, two things. One, I wanted to respond and thank Commissioner Myron for her comments. I have to say, I appreciate this board and all of you on it very much. And I always feel like relationships go beyond just one vote or one issues. And that's something that I've learned, and it's something that's very true. And I think especially with all the work that this board does together, it's a testament to every single person on this board. I also wanted to say that it is the birthday of the new policy director for my office, Hayden Miller. So I wanted to wish him a very happy birthday today, and congratulations. I'm so glad he's a part of the team.
Happy birthday, Hayden. Commissioner Stigman.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations, Hayden, and happy birthday. I wanted to respond to Commissioner Myron's comments. I too feel the way that this board deliberates and collaborates is a really high bar and good example of, I think, the civil discourse that I wish there was more of that throughout our country. And even when we choose to disagree with one another, we do it in a civil, respectful manner. And I value every one of our board members and really appreciate every perspective. And I think that there's validity in every one of our perspectives. And so I just wanted to lift that up and honor how important I think it is. And so thank you, Commissioner Myron, for bringing that up. The other thing is we're in the countdown, the census. We have less than 30 days. So I need you all to make sure that your friends, your relatives, your coworkers, everyone that you know, ask them if they filled out their census. We've been reading some headlines that the federal government is talking about retracting funding to some states. That's all the more reason why this money is incredibly important for education, for food, for housing, for medical care. Everything that our society is going through right now is so exacerbated by the pandemic, and that is why this money is absolutely critical. It will set a baseline for the money that we are going to get, not just for 1 year, but for each of the next 10 years. So please, please, I'm begging you, talk to everyone you know and make sure that they filled out their census. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stegman. Thank you for leading this important effort. I know that we all are going to be pushing out the message over the next less than a month because we are in the countdown to get people counted. I have a couple things. The first is that there is another birthday today, a birthday of a very beloved Multnomah County employee, former Oregonian reporter, and all around. She might be small in size, but she's large in personality and stature. Julie Sullivan Springhetti, happy birthday to you. And I am excited to announce, this is really monumental, folks. We are going to be resuming public testimony during our Thursday board meetings. We're starting next week, September 10th. This means that the public will be able to provide testimony on agenda items and non-agenda items, either from a computer on the WebEx platform or by calling into the meeting from a phone. People can obviously continue to submit their testimony in written form as well. Slight change from our in-person meetings, though, is that the deadline to sign up to testify is the Wednesday prior to the board meeting, and by 4 p.m. on that Wednesday. A sign-up form will be available on the board meeting's webpage this Friday. We will send out information to all of the commissioners so that you can put this message out on your and to your social media and to your constituents, so that we have people that understand that this change is happening. Process is a little different. I want to thank all of the staff who've worked really hard over the past few months to get the ability for the public to participate in our Thursday board meetings. And there may be some glitches at the beginning, so I want to remind folks to be calm and to be kind as we work through this, but we have missed our friends coming to testify before us on Thursday mornings, and we will be glad to have them starting again next Thursday, September the 10th. And with that, we have nothing else on our agenda today. Have a lovely rest of your day. Hayden and Julie, have a very happy birthday. And we will see you next Tuesday at our board briefing.